Hey, you guys. Movie retrospective time once again. And we're doing some more real old shit, going back to the 60s.
Yeah.
Because I feel like like I said, you guys seem to, when I put 50s and 60s movies in the polls, like those usually get the most votes. And I do kind of feel like that's probably a direction we want to go in going forward a little bit, just because there's a lot of, kind of movies that we haven't done like from those eras, and I feel like we should do, because we've done like shit tons of stuff from the
Probably
70s
a
and
hole
80s.
in the market too. There's not a lot of people talking about those.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And this one, Dementia 13, is one. This one does have several reviews, probably mostly because it was directed by Francis Ford Coppola in one of his very, very first films. So there is some of that, but this movie kind of falls into the same category as, Carnival of Souls or Night of Living Dead, that because of like accidents with legal shit, like fell into the public domain. So this movie usually turns up if you get, how you used to buy like those DVDs or Blu-rays of like, 50 horror movies like from the 1960s, and usually this is one of the ones that's on there, and that's because it's in the public domain. Now in 2017 though, Francis Ford Coppola actually oversaw a new Blu-ray release, like a special edition that was all like redone and everything like that, and he actually did a director's cut, which weirdly is shorter than the theatrical cut, because he took out some stuff that Roger Corman had put in there that he didn't really like. And this movie's pretty short to start with. I think we saw the theatrical cut, although it did look nice. We watched it on Tubi. You can watch it for free on Pluto as well. So I'm not sure if that's the same version that was on Blu-ray, but it said it was 74 minutes, 75 minutes, and I think the director's cut is 69 minutes.
It's a decent movie. It's a weird movie because it's in between eras. It has 60s style acting. It feels very stagey, like a play, but then it has a lot of elements of slasher and kind of cutting edge type stuff. Like, you can tell it's trying to top Psycho, which it kind of does in a way. It's kind of impressive for a low budget movie. Pretty well made for the time.
mean, for 1963, yeah. Well, the thing about it, Francis Ford Coppola, this actually, like I said, technically was not his first movie, because he'd actually made a couple nudie pictures like before this one. But this was kind of his first, I guess if you want to call it, like, legitimate movie. Yeah. Like, sexploitation movies are movies too, but I'm just saying that he doesn't usually put those on his resume, I guess. But yeah, so this was like the first one that he actually got to direct that was like a legitimate movie, I guess if you want to say.
Has a good cast. You'll recognize the people. One of the leads is the guy who played the alien child in the old Star Trek, the classic ones, the one where he's dressed up like Napoleon and playing with Kirk and Spock, and then it turns out later he's basically like a Q, and then it turns out, as ridiculous he is, his parents show up and goes, "Oh, sorry, this is our child." And he goes, "No, Mom, I'm gonna still play." He's in it, and he does a good job. He was
job. William Campbell, I think that actor's name is. I think he was in a couple of the old Star Treks.
Old Star Treks, yeah. He played a couple different roles in it. But the one he's mostly remembered for is basically a Q child, which is, if you know Next Generation, or Q's in it. He's like a godlike alien being that can just control reality. And if it captures the Enterprise and starts playing with the crew like toys and doing little war games, he's dressed up like Napoleon and shit. And they don't know how to deal with it. And then eventually his parents showed up. "Oh, I'm sorry, he's just a child. We'll give you back to the ship." It was a good episode. But he's in it, does a good job. And then he has that other guy who's that creepy. What was he from?
Patrick McGee. He was he was in a fuck ton of stuff.
In a fuck ton of movies.
Probably most people recognize him from A Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork Orange. He's the guy with the typewriter,
Yeah, that ends up in the wheelchair that gets attacked.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, he was in tons. I think he was in some of Roger Corman's other movies too. Was he not? Wasn't he in some of his Poe pictures? I feel like he was in Mask of the Red Death with Vincent Price.
I think he was.
I think he might have been. So yeah, he worked a lot with Roger Corman back in the day.
And then there's 3 or 4 cute 60s chicks in it that get you to watch the movie.
Luanna Anders, who's kind of like the main, we'll get into sort of like the main character, at least at the beginning of the movie. She actually, I think she was maybe was dating Jack Nicholson at the time.
Okay.
Or no, maybe that was the other woman that was in this. One of the two chicks was dating Jack Nicholson and was in Easy Rider, I think.
Yeah.
But it might not have been the main one like at the beginning. It might have been the other one, the girl that played Kane.
All these people had careers. You know what I mean? They all ended up being something. You know, they might have been forgotten, but this is a long time ago. This is the 60s, you know. But if you're into movies and old TV series, you'll recognize them. And it's set in a real Irish castle.
It is.
It doesn't have real Irish people in it all the time, but I don't think there are any real Irish. Maybe one or
Some
two,
of the
right?
background characters are actual Irish people, but yeah, most of them, even if they're supposed to be Irish, they're usually Americans. Although they do have like a little bit of a line in there where it said like because all the main guys that are in it are supposed to be this Irish family, but they're saying, oh, they got educated in America, so presumably they lost their accent.
So it's. You don't have to worry about funky sets or anything. It's on location, and it's a good location. It's creepy looking.
Yeah, that's actually, I think it's called Howth Castle, like outside of Dublin.
And you're going to see some dead bodies and weird, I guess, like preserved bodies and weird shit. The opening sequence shows a dead body kind of artistically decaying underneath the water. It looks really cool. It's creepy. Just brace yourself. It's 60s. You know what I mean? It's got 60s acting. It's like the Star Trek episode.
And it was very inexpensive to make, which we'll get into in a little bit. But
they're trying to do kind of like Psycho and like take it up a couple notches, and it's weird. It's good. It's for a cheap movie of its time. It kind of stands out. It's good.
I always had kind of an affection for this one, actually. I think there's some really effective, like, creepy shots in it. And I'm going to say, even though it's essentially a Psycho ripoff, which I'll get into in a little bit too, but it also has a little bit of a Giallo flavor to it.
Yeah.
Also. Not overtly, but, you know, just like a little bit.
Now, the scenes that happen in it, there's a lot of talking in it. And the scenes are kind of like theatrical. It's like something you'd see in a stage play. But that was just the way movies were in the 60s. A lot of them were like that. It's not an action movie, but action happens in it.
Yeah.
It's in a weird in-between phase of cinema, where it's partly theater, partly movie, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I mean, it's essentially... Like, it does have some elements of Giallo or slasher movies, but it's more like a gothic murder mystery.
Kind of reminds me of the old black and white 60s movie about the woman who says that she sees the ghosts, but she's probably just crazy. What was the name of that one?
Which one, Carnival of Souls?
No, but the other one, more classic. We saw the remake recently. It was just like, okay. Remember the woman shows up and she's taking care of the kids and she thought the ghosts...
Oh, The Innocents.
The Innocents. It kind of, in a way, reminds me of like The Innocents, the original Innocents. Just the way
Man,
it
I love
looked.
that movie.
The way it looked, the way the acting in it kind of was like that style.
But that was like kind of the style.
That was
then.
the style of the 60s. But if you like The Innocents, you'd probably like this. If you like Psycho, you'd like this.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, this is obviously like way cheaper than that.
Yeah,
and
The Innocents is a classic.
And was shot in 8 days. 9 days, something like that.
Yeah, tell them a story about how they shot it.
Well, how they did this, this is great. So Francis Ford Coppola, now Roger Corman, even though he's known as like making a bunch of schlock for as cheaply and as quickly as possible.
But entertaining.
He actually, and most of them, I mean, some of his movies are more entertaining than others, but most of them are worth watching.
James Cameron came from those movies.
Yeah, well, a lot, that's what I'm saying. Ron Howard, like a lot of big directors started out kind of like under his tutelage, you know what I mean? Like he really kind of like knew what he was like John Sayles, like people like that started out working for him. And Francis Ford Coppola was no exception.
I mean, Galaxy of Terror was actually the prototype for Aliens. You know, and that's Roger Corman. If you guys have never seen Galaxy of Terror, see it.
Yeah, we did a review of it not too long ago.
Yeah.
But Francis Ford Coppola, like I said, I think he directed a couple nudie pictures like before this. I can't remember what they were called. But he had actually, Roger Corman was actually in Ireland, or, you know, I think it was Ireland or somewhere in the UK. And they were shooting a movie called The Young Racers. Now, Coppola was the sound guy on that movie. Now, the budget for that movie was $165,000. That was like a bigger movie that they had. But... true to Roger Corman's nature, they actually had $22,000 left over from the budget when they were done. So Roger Corman goes to Coppola and says, hey, I'll give you this $22,000. I want you to make essentially a Psycho ripoff. Actually, I don't even think that's what he said. I think he said, I want you to make a ripoff of William Castle's Homicidal, which itself was a Psycho ripoff.
A ripoff of a ripoff.
That's what Coppola said, like, because he actually did, in 2017, when they restored the movie, he actually did a director's commentary, and he said, he essentially wanted a ripoff of a ripoff. So
we're at the location.
Yeah, so they're already there. They,
Yep.
like I said, he had the money. So they gave him the $22,000. Roger Corman did, and then Coppola kind of like sneaks around behind Roger Corman's back and gets another $20,000 by selling the European rights to the movie to like some production company over there without telling Corman that he had extra money. So
Like a man should.
like, yeah, that's what he did.
Yeah.
So he has $42,000 and a gorgeous, like, crumbling Irish castle to make this movie in. Most of the actors were just, paid peanuts. They were just, like, friends of his from UCLA, stuff like that. And he pretty much knocked out the script. I think he knocked out, like, the idea for it, like, overnight and, like, showed it to Roger Corman. And he told him about the one scene where, like, the woman gets killed coming out of the water, like, with the axe and everything.
Yeah.
And Roger Corman's like, beautiful, film it.
Yeah.
And he didn't interfere, actually, the whole time. Now, he
It was
wasn't...
a free movie.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
make the
essentially,
movie.
they were going to spend that $22,000 like on the other movie anyway, like the bigger movie, and they didn't spend it. So he's like, might as well get another. But that was Roger Corman. That's how he made all those movies without ever losing a dime. Was that, man, if he ever had anything left over, he used like sets and shit like that like multiple times, because why waste it,
To a big studio, 22 grand's nothing. I mean, that wouldn't even cover catering.
No, it probably wouldn't.
Yeah, so
Making a whole movie for $42,000. I mean, you have to think too, like Night of the Living Dead, which was obviously like a few years after this, was like 5 years after this. That cost, I think, $68,000.
Yeah.
Maybe slightly more. But this was made for $42,000. Like I said, he knocked together the script like really quick. It does have a lot of similarities to Psycho in the sense of the character that you're following from the beginning of the film. Spoiler alert, she gets killed like probably less than halfway through the movie, which just like in Psycho. So that's kind of similar. But other than that, it's kind of more, I don't know, like I said, it's more like a gothic. It's more gothic because it's set in a castle, and it's more like a murder mystery, I guess.
More like a murder mystery.
Because it's
and
kind
a
of
family intrigue.
and family, yeah, which that's what I mean. That's what it's kind of like a family curse type thing. So what happens in the story?
It has slasher elements.
Yeah, and it definitely, because there is an axe murder, like
it shows
yeah,
fucking women chained up like raw meat and stuff. It's nothing that would shock a modern audience, but I'm seeing it with modern eyes and looking at it. That's pretty good for the '60s. That's pretty hardcore for the '60s.
I mean, yeah, like
Looks like something you'd see in the '70s. Actually. Yeah, but black and white.
Now, I mean, so after Coppola made it, like I said, he didn't really have any, interference from Roger Corman, like, while he was making the movie. But then, like, after Roger Corman watched it, he was like, one, it needs to be longer. He's like, it needs another axe murder in there, because he didn't think there was enough axe murders. And another thing they added, which Coppola hated, and I guess this was because of the whole William Castle thing. We talked about William Castle before when we talked about the Tingler, like all of his gimmicks. This one also had a gimmick. It's not on the one that you watch on Tubi, but on the theatrical cut it was. They had a thing at the beginning that I think it was called the D13 test.
Yeah.
And it was basically had this guy, like a little prologue, and he was supposed to be a psychiatrist. I don't think it was just an actor. But he was just like supposed to be a psychiatrist, and he's administering a test to the audience to make sure that you're mentally sound enough to watch the movie, because it's so terrifying that, you might like flip out and like start axe murdering people if like the movie like triggers you or something like that. So yeah, so they added that, which was like an extra 5 minutes, because like I said, they were trying to like, fill it out pretty much. And I think the groundskeeper Simon getting beheaded, I think they added that in post too. Like they added that after, because Roger Corman said needs more axe murders, you know what I mean? So they did that. But the groundskeeper murder is still in there, but the prologue at the beginning with the psychiatrist isn't in there anymore, because Coppola really did not like that. He's like, I didn't want that added, but whatever. So this movie was actually just made too. They were just going to throw it on the bottom of, because you know how they used to do double bills like back in the 50s and 60s. This one was going to be the bottom half of the double bill, but from X, The Man with X-Ray Eyes, which actually I covered over my Flickers of Fear show, and that's a classic. I love that fucking movie. This one's, I don't think, quite as good as that, but it's almost as good as that, I'm gonna say. I don't know. I like that movie a lot. But this one was just kind of like a throwaway that was going to be on the bottom of the bill for that. So the story is kind of about this woman named Louise. And she's apparently married this dude named John, who is from a very, very wealthy family. At the very beginning, they're in a rowboat just for whatever reason, like a rowboat in the middle of the night. And they're kind of having an argument, and I think she wants a divorce, basically. I guess she's, like, sick of his ass. And he's like, well, yeah, but if you divorce me, then you're not going to be in the will. Like, you know, you can only get my family's money, like, access my family's money, like, through me by remaining married to me. And then, very inconveniently, he has a heart condition, and he drops dead, like, in the boat. Now, this is, again, very inconvenient for her because now she's not going to be able to get in the will because her husband's dead. So she's like, well, shit, she didn't kill him. He just died accidentally of his condition. So she's like, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that he's still alive. So she dumps his ass in the lake or ocean or whatever the hell. And then she writes a letter to his family in Ireland. And I guess they're having a wedding because, like, the other brother, Richard, is marrying his girlfriend or whatever. So she's like, oh, yeah, we're going to come to the wedding, but I'm going to come by myself because John got called away on business and doesn't know when he'll be back. And she figures, she's like a gold digger, right? So she figures when she gets there that she's going to, like, ingratiate herself into the family so that she gets written into the will, hopefully before they figure out that John is dead. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of her plan. So, like I said, it's very much a setup like Psycho, where you have a woman at the beginning who has, you know, committed a crime, and Psycho obviously was embezzling, and then she kind of gets killed halfway through. But the way that she starts to ingratiate herself with the family. Now, there are two remaining brothers, Richard and Billy, I think is the other one. And they had a sister named Kathleen. And 7 years ago, Kathleen, when she was little, she drowned in a pond, like on the grounds. And the mom, you know, understandably, was inconsolable after this. So every year they have this really weird, like, memorial. Like, her grave is all, like, in the, like, right on the grounds, like, right outside the house. And they have this whole, like, ritualistic kind of memorial, like a funeral, like, every year, like, on the date of her death, like, commemorating it. And the mom gets, like, real emotionally volatile around this time, and they have to bring in the family doctor and all that kind of stuff. So Louise sees this as an opportunity, and she's like, I know how I'm going to ingratiate myself into this family. I'm going to say that Kathleen's ghost is walking around, but that she's only talking to me, and, you know, then I'll be able to, like, give you messages. So she, like, goes and sneaks around, like, she breaks into Kathleen's room, which they've left the same since the little girl died, and she takes, like, some of her dolls, and then she ties all the dolls, like, up with rope, and then she puts, like, acid or some slow acting whatever, like, on it, and then she dives down to the bottom of the lake to put these dolls down there so that the acid will kind of, like, eat through the rope, and then they'll float up, like, in opposite, so it looks like a sign, like, from the ghost or whatever. But, like, while she's down there, she also sees this super creepy shrine, essentially, to the little girl that looks like the little girl's corpse is down there, but it's in pretty good shape for being 7 years old, or, you know, the corpse being 7 years old. So she's like, what the fuck? Like, that's really creepy. Like, it's like a little gravestone, like a little thing laying there and all that kind of stuff. So then she's doing that, but then she pops out the water, and somebody pops by and with an axe and chops her up. And kind of
her head right off. Boom.
Well, I don't know if he doesn't cut her head off because
I thought he cut her head off.
No, because when they find the body later, she's still got her head on the shoulders.
Okay.
The groundskeeper gets his head cut off.
Okay, yeah, I got the two confused. Okay.
Yeah, Simon, the groundskeeper. Yeah. And I think that guy was just kind of added for comic relief and for an extra
kill.
Axe murder. And maybe as a red herring, although you never do, like, believe that he's... Now, one thing I will say about this is that the mystery, there's not a fuck ton of characters. So you pretty much know who the axe murderer is. I think they telegraphed it too much. You can tell that they're trying to make you think that Richard is the killer because it's like, oh, he's more emotional. He's an artist, and he's, like, more... He's not, like, a jerk, but he's more, like, aggressive, I guess. So you know that it's not him because they're trying to make you think it's him. So really the only guy that's left, well, it could be the doctor, I guess, because the doctor is totally acting like a weirdo. But again, because he's acting like a weirdo, then you know, well, that's probably not him either. Because it's always going to be, like, the least likely person, just like in a Giallo movie. Yeah. So you know that it's the more mild-mannered brother, Billy. But even if that wasn't the case, you would still know it was him because they show, like, flashbacks of him as a kid and Kathleen as a kid, and they're playing together on the shores of the lake where she drowned, and then him going, oh, shit. So you figure, oh, well, he either pushed her or feels responsible for her death somehow, and that's probably like what made him flip out, right? So I kind of feel like, yeah, you know that's coming. But yeah, he's the one that's running around like axe murdering people. So yeah, so I don't know, like I really kind of have, and you find out too that the body of Kathleen, because you see it like every time somebody gets either killed and or stalked by the axe murderer, there's that body is always like laying around somewhere, like he's moving it around from place to place so people will see it, and then he'll be like chopping people up. But you find out later that it's not her actual body. It's actually like a wax dummy that he'd made of her that he was like carrying around.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he's protecting it.
He's protecting it because he couldn't protect his actual sister. I don't know if
it's like Psycho and him keeping his mom's body. Kind of like
yeah, that's what I mean. So it does have a lot of similarities.
You weren't really sure if that was really the body preserved or if it was just a dummy. It was just a dummy.
Yeah,
but it was creepy looking.
It was very creepy. Like, especially that scene where Louise, like, dives down with the dolls and then sees that there. She's like, what the fuck? And then, like, she comes out. Because that was, like, a really good scene, I thought. But,
not a bad movie, but
it's not.
But you have to understand, you have to understand the context of the time. And the context of the time, it was punching way above its weight for what they paid for it. I mean, it was creepy. And it probably inspired more shenanigans later on when it came in filmmaking. Remember that old movie with, you know, this and that? Because you could borrow a lot from this movie. And it ended up in slashers, some of the ideas.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Now, is this something top shelf that I would recommend? Oh, you got to go see it? No, not really. I would see other stuff first. But if you've seen a bunch of movies and you're into horror and you haven't seen this one, yeah, you might want to check this one out.
I mean, I think this is definitely one of the better Psycho ripoffs.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, yeah, it's a ripoff in the sense that it's got a lot of similarities. Like I said, you have a heroine who gets killed, which is not really the heroine because she's a shitty person, but, you know, a main character, I guess, who gets killed like less than halfway through the movie. Like, you think you're going to be following this woman the whole time, and then, nope, she gets like axe murdered. And then, you know, like you said, the whole thing with the wax dummy, like him carrying the body. And you have a scene, too, you know, the doctor played by weird-ass Patrick McGee, where there's a scene at the end where he, like, explains, you know what I mean? Like, the pathology of Billy, like, why he was killing people.
It's a Coppola movie. It's not shit. You know, he's put something together. You know, they got more than what they paid for out of the movie. You know.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. It's particularly the scene where the doctor finds Louise's body, like in the, what is that, like a meat locker?
It's like a meat storage.
Like a meat storage thing.
And she's like supposed to be that.
Yeah, and she was like hanging up. Yeah, because there was like a side of beef or some shit over there too. But like, yeah, she was hanging there and she was like all bloody, and it looked like some of her skin was scraped off her legs and stuff like. I mean, it's black and white, so it's not super graphic. But I was like, wow, they kind of got away with a lot for like 1963.
Yeah, kind of let your imagination run wild with it.
Yeah,
you're not really sure what it is you're looking at.
And
it's creepy.
Yeah, and I really liked like the underwater shots, like where they, especially where, like I said, where Louise finds the little shrine like underneath, and like some of the scenes like where she goes in the little girl's room and there's all those like creepy toys, like she's kind of going around with the thing looking for toys that she can use to like pretend that there's a ghost and stuff like that. So it does have a lot of, you know, it does have a lot of similarities with Psycho, but it has its own thing going on. Like I said, it's almost like a gothic murder mystery Giallo-esque version of Psycho. You know, it's with some of the same plot beats, but not really that similar. Like I said, it's definitely one of the best rip. I don't think I've seen William Castle. Like I said, did one called Homicidal, but I think I've seen it, but I was probably like a kid, so I don't remember if that one was any good.
Just borrowed an idea or two from Psycho, really.
Yeah.
The rest of it, like you said, was more like a Giallo murder mystery slasher, kind of.
Yeah, it definitely did have that. Now, it's interesting, too, because I guess, you know, because Psycho came out in 1960, and that was, like, such a big deal, and then immediately, like, everybody started making cheapy knockoffs of it, and they all had to have, like a synonym for crazy, but just, like, one word, like homicidal, or... Now, this one was initially just going to be called Dementia, but which, you know, it in today's parlance, that doesn't really mean the same thing as crazy, but you know. But I think there was another movie that was coming out that was called Dementia, so they slapped the 13 on the end just because 13 is a scary number, I guess. Dementia and 13 don't really have anything to do with anything.
Sounds cool though.
It does sound cool.
Sounds like a band.
There is a band called Dementia 13.
Yeah, okay.
They're named after this movie, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah. So there's more than one movie called Dementia. But then you had stuff like
old lady with a walker.
Yeah, I know. And then like later on in the 70s, you had like the one about that movie about Ed Gein, was like Schizoid, but that was 80s. Yeah. Then the one from the 70s about like Ed Gein that was called Deranged. Yeah. You had that kind of stuff. But that wasn't anything like Psycho. That was based on a real person. But I kind of feel like that was kind of like the naming convention for these kind of things. I don't know. I really had. I watched a couple other reviews of this, and some people dig it, but a lot of people kind of thought it was boring or didn't really. I don't know though. I always kind of had an affection for this one. It's got like some really cool shots. It's very short, so there's not like a lot of, I don't know. It has like a good plot, and I think like some of the transitions are a little wonky and stuff like that.
60s,
but
so
yeah,
to a lot of people they would think boring because it's kind of wordy. There's people standing around having whole conversations, building up, because they're telling, they're not showing. They can't really show
because they didn't have any fucking money.
They didn't have any money. But then when it comes to the murders, they show that, or they show the aftermath of it, and it does get pretty weird. It could have been shrunk down into a 30-minute Twilight Zone. It probably would have been more fun. But no, they're trying to make a full-length movie.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is that I didn't know this until I was researching the movie today, but they did a remake of it in 2017. And I heard it was kind of shit. I was gonna watch it, like it said it was on Hulu, but it was only on Hulu if you had like one of the add-ons, and I'm like, well, I'm not paying extras to watch that. But I read like some other reviews of it, and people said, it just wasn't that great.
I wouldn't remake this.
And it's like I didn't even know it had been remade.
This is a one-time thing, and you really only watch it because it's old and it has a lot, and it was ahead of its time in a couple aspects. It had some good ideas in it. It probably influenced other stuff too. Wouldn't surprise me if a lot of Giallo flicks ripped this off.
Maybe.
The Italians would look at that and go, "Oh, that's a good idea."
Well, the thing about it though is that I think technically the first Giallo movie was Mario Bava's The Girl Who Knew Too Much, which I think maybe came out the same year as this.
Okay.
So and Giallo movies were actually kind of based on the Giallo murder mysteries, like the books. You know what I mean? Which had been out since like the 1920s or something like that. Usually Edgar Wallace, like a lot of British crime writers. So it's not, I don't know. It's kind of like I said, it's like a back and forth thing.
In practical terms, though, Giallo movies were what they called made by a process called pulled out the ass. They made those things up as they were going. A lot of times they had the script was just kind of like a script, and then they just would kind of just film stuff. It'd be a good idea. We need to film this, and then they'd film some shit. And then they'd kind of patch it together into a story. That was most of them.
Although I will, like I said, I will argue that some of them actually do have really complex plots that absolutely do work that you would have to have written ahead of time.
Yeah, some of them. But the good ones were like that. A lot of the average ones, though, I think they were just kind of made up after they were shot.
And some of them were based on, like I said, like stories, like Edgar Wallace stories, or like novels, like crime novels. Some of them were based on those. So,
because if you shoot enough stuff, you can edit it together and make any story you want. You might have some continuity, but then you might not, and then it makes a story. I mean, there were some of them I remembered. I never really could figure them out from the 70s that we saw as a kid.
Yeah, well, some of that might be just like lost in translation too.
Yeah, maybe.
This one, I kind of feel like this one, it has a kind of, like I said, a Giallo-esque plot. It's more like a gothic plot, I think, but kind of there is some overlap. This story, like I said, is pretty easy to follow in the sense that you have this gold digger who's trying to like suck her way into the family and the inheritance by pretending that she can talk to the ghost of this little dead girl, and then she gets killed, and then and then they're trying to figure out like who this axe murderer is that's running around, and it's like a family thing. So it's not like a super complicated plot, but like I said, it's not a super long movie either. It's only like a little bit longer than an hour. Honestly, I think this could have been a little bit longer. Like they could have expanded on the characters some, but that's okay. I mean, it's probably always better, like, to be shorter than too long. But I don't know. I kind of feel like they could have like fleshed it out slightly. I don't know. Coppola, like I said, the version he wanted, the director's cut, is 69 minutes. and the theatrical cut was 75 minutes. Now, some of that was the prologue that he hated so much, but some of it, like I said, I think the murder, the groundskeeper getting, or the poacher or whatever, getting beheaded, I think that was added later, just because they wanted another axe murder in there. Because really, Louise, other than Simon, I think was the only one that got murdered, right? I mean, the axe murderer did chase other people around, like the mom and stuff, but he didn't catch them.
Yeah, I don't remember all that clearly. I remember some of the stuff I kind of forgot after I saw it, to be honest. There were just elements in the movie that were ahead of its time for the 60s.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't expect him to do that,
Yeah,
but,
and I mean, if you're into Francis Ford Coppola and want to see like some of his early stuff, his real rough, like cheapy early stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, he still, like I said, he still has affection for this movie. He did, a restoration of it, and he did like a director's commentary as recently as 2017. Yeah. So
it does kind of have elements of a Giallo movie.
Yeah, it definitely does.
My favorite Giallo was not a Giallo; it was a fake Giallo. Remember, Alice, Sweet Alice? That was felt like a Giallo movie, but I don't think it was American made.
It was Giallo's a style. Yeah, most of them are Italian, but yeah, that is kind of.
It almost felt like it was dubbed too.
Yeah, I wonder if they did that on purpose.
Was it dubbed?
I don't know.
I always remembered thinking that movie was foreign. I always thought it was foreign until it turned out it was filmed in Chicago or something like that.
Something like that.
Or Baltimore.
Yeah, it might have been Baltimore now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah,
we covered that like a while back. Yeah, I really like
psychopathic little girl. Turns out you think she's killing people. Turns out it's not her though.
Yeah. They make you kind of think that. Like I said, it's a red herring type of thing, which they're kind of doing in this one too. But like I said, it's pretty obvious who the killer is because there's not really that many people to pick from, and the people that are kind of like acting shifty, you're just kind of like, well, it's obviously not them. So it must be the most innocuous member of the family because, like I said, they telegraph it too much because he has a couple flashbacks where just like, oh, he's totally the killer. But yeah. So if you haven't seen it and you're interested in Coppola's early work, then you absolutely should see it. If you're interested in 60s horror, Psycho ripoffs, I definitely think this is one of the best of the Psycho ripoffs, of which there were many. It's on Pluto TV at the moment. It's on Tubi. You can probably get it other places as well. Like I said, it was in the public domain for a long time. Most of the older versions of it were like real shitty looking, but I've heard that the restoration, like on the special edition Blu-ray, is beautiful. But I don't think I've seen that one. The one that's on Tubi actually looks pretty good though. So, if you want to watch it for nothing, then you can absolutely watch it on there. And that will do it for this movie retrospective for this week, and we will see you guys on the next one. Bye.